Hey guys, what's up? It's Turdog. Welcome back to GT Sport. For today we are diving into part 4 of my little coding adventure to get GT5 style performance points into GT Sport. Now in my last video I asked for comments as to whether I should continue attempting to factor in the tire compound in the PP formula, similar to how other games like Forza might do so, or if I should keep it strictly like GT5, where the tires are not considered, and we'll just assume that if we run a lobby with the PP regulation, that there would just be a tire restriction. Now, as I am not a big YouTuber, naturally, nobody commented on my video. Hardly anyone actually saw it. So that's not a big issue here. My friend Obelisk, he came in and he messaged me and said, hey, the way I'm factoring the tires in, it doesn't quite work, which obviously we found out. The reason for that is because naturally I took the term circle of traction literally, and it's not a circle, it's an ellipse. Right, that's the shape of the tire contact patch with the road surface. It's an ellipse. It's wider side to side and shorter front to back. So naturally, regardless of tire compound, you will pull more lateral G than longitudinal G. And he wanted to continue on with seeing if we can get the tire compounds factored into the formula. Well, I really wanted to avoid having to find lateral G because, as you are about to see, it's a rather complex task. The formula is quite simple. Simply divide the velocity squared by the radius of the corner. And then, that'll give you the meters per second. Divide that by your G, 9.8 meters per second squared. And then you get how many G's you're pulling in the corner. So we need a corner with a known radius. Now I could have looked up any corner, but it just so happens that Suzuka's 130R is named specifically for its 130 meter radius. So we use that. The problem here is driver consistency. I wanted to factor all of that out, which I successfully did in the full ABS stop longitudinal G testing. Here you're going to see, it's not quite 100% perfect, but it's as close as I could get for these particular tests here. You're also going to see not all the tests are completed in this video. Obelisk chipped in and did several tire compounds. He actually did about half of them, and then I did half of them or something like that. But this was the process we went through to get them. So as you can see, I took all of those lateral G figures and multiplied them by the longitudinal G figures for each tire compound to factor the tires into the PP formula. The result of that is that the Group 3 Supra is no longer able to downtune to 1000 pp. This new tire scaling has quite an effect on the PP scale overall. Okay, so let's get to tuning our cars here for this test. So we're going to add yet another new sheet, and we're also going to copy this so that the suspension is kept on, because it's not really drivable on the stock suspension. So we're using 2000 pp instead. Now you see here, let me go back. So Before, without factoring the tires in, the car had to be at 153% of its stock power. When I factored the longitudinal G in, I dropped to 141%. But now it's going to get a lot more drastic because we have to take into consideration the fact that on a racing super soft, a road car can pull 2.72 lateral Gs, even without having any downforce. That's why I was using the BMW M4 for testing. Pretty sure I said that in the last video, but just in case I hadn't, it was very important that I did not have a car that had any sort of aerodynamic equipment on it. So, actually, this isn't quite 2000. This is for a 2000 pp regulation, but it works out to 1995 pp. We are going to drop this down to 90% power because it's got so much grip, and we are prioritizing the same way we were before, going for a minimum weight and then the best tires and then power and aero. So 90% power, we can drop down to minimum weight, and then that's going to be it for this car. On the Group 4 car, right, so this car actually does hit exactly 2000 pp. So we're going to roll with that. It actually gets to boost its power slightly, so not a whole lot, you know, just like 8 horsepower. Weight still remaining at minimum because that's what we're prioritizing. However, it's going to have to drop to a sports medium tire. Now, you may be a little concerned about this because it had trouble keeping up last time. I too am a little concerned. However, you have to keep in mind that before, the road car Supra was at 144%, and now it's down to 90, or it was something like 140, and I don't remember. Oh yes, and we also have to take a look at the aero just to make sure it's at the right level, and we can actually afford to bump the aero up slightly. Now, moving on to the Group 3 car. Once again, copy the sheet and paste it in to make sure that nothing else is being changed here. And this car is going to hit 1999 pp. It gets a boost to power, a small boost as you can see, and it still maintains its minimum weight. However, it also gets a boost to the tire compound. It gets bumped up, and as you can see, it's getting quite, on the graph in the bottom left corner of your screen, that makes quite a huge difference in, well, everything, because your tires are so important. Okay, finally, the downforce. We're just going to double check that because that's likely going to be adjusted, and yes it is. So we have some room to slightly increase the downforce as well. So here we are. Okay. So now it's time to actually drive these cars and see how they run. Let's see. You know, I'm a little concerned after seeing how it performed last time. But knowing that we have both longitudinal and lateral G accounted for, I'm feeling a little optimistic, but a little skeptical still as to whether or not this will work. And again, we have the aerodynamics to consider as well. So hopefully that's all still balanced out and it doesn't screw anything up. But there's only one way to find out, and that will be to drive the cars. So let's get to that. Alright, so we are starting with the road car. It's what I just happened to have selected at the time. Now you'll notice we still have quite a bit of grip. The car is still pretty well planted. But with that power reduction, it was reduced by about 50%, all the way down to 90. So significantly less straight line speed, as you can see. Little deep in the spoon there. It's okay. I don't need a 100% perfect lap. Just need a good enough lap to get a baseline here to see how the cars compare. And despite being on the racing super soft, I do have to slow down for that 130R. So lack of downforce will prevent me from being able to actually take it flat out. I did take it a little slower than necessary. If needed, I'll just do another lap. But we're going to see what this lap looks like in terms of lap time and how the other cars compare before I decide whether or not I need to do another lap. So we are at 212.6. Alright, so we're into the Group 4 Super now. This actually is not my first attempt at this lap, so you'll probably be seeing a ghost at some point. Hopefully in the rear view, because my first lap was not anywhere near fast enough. So we're on a Sport Medium tire, but we're still downgraded in the power quite severely. let's see what we got here. So this is quite a far ways back from where the road car finished. So already we can see we still have issues here. Now, as I suspected, it would seem the aerodynamics is probably interfering with the balance here, so I may have to tweak that scale a little more. Let's go into the Group 3 car and see how that turns out. So we have the road car at a 212.626, then Group 4 at a 220.431, and then the Group 3 remains to be seen. Alright, so here we are in the Group 3 car. Remember, while I do have more downforce in the Group 4 car, I am also bumped down to a cover saw tire. So, severely reduced grip here, especially in these slower corners, even in the medium speed corners. So, it seemed I was very much right to be skeptical about this working. Not quite the way I was looking to take that hairpin. We'll roll with it just to see what time we end up with. Hold on to it. $217. So about halfway between the two cars. Alright, so what we could see here is it's kind of similar to my first test with the Super Formula car and the LMP car at Circuit de la Sarthe, where it seemed to kind of sort of work, but it didn't. And that was even before I factored the tires in. But when I had I had some kind of problem with calculating the PP back then. That was back in part 1. And now we're seeing a similar issue here. So the road car is doing a 212. The Group 3 car at a 217. And then the Group 4 car at a 220. So I feel like it's a step in the right direction. if we want to continue factoring the tires into the formula. But some work still has to be done to get this to work right. And I'm kind of getting the feeling that maybe the downforce probably has a little too much weight to it. Alright, so I was going to end the video there, but I wasn't satisfied. Because I feel like the fix is going to be something small, something quick and simple. So what you're looking at now is the fix that I just wrote up. Recall that the formula I'm using to calculate PP is as follows. Let's see if I remember it offhand. PP equals tire multiplier times torque curve area plus, okay, bear with me, aero scale times the the aero points, the total downforce points. So you have your front downforce plus your rear downforce, and then all of that is divided by the weight. Now the aero scale is important because when you divide that number, when you consider that that number is getting divided by the weight of the car, which regardless of which units you use, is going to be over 1,000. You know, unless you have a really, really light, like Formula 1 car, or an 8.6 or something, and you're using kilograms, then it's not going to be, you know, over 1,000. But anyway, majority of it doesn't really make much difference. What you would get there is you would just be changing the overall scale of the PP and not how the PP itself works. So what we have to do is you have to multiply the downforce points by some very high number, like about 1,000, right? And the way I figured that was from looking at this FD here. You see, its downforce, it actually has, you know, that wing in the back is adjustable between 0 and 80 points. Now, if you don't multiply this number by 1,000, then these points are entirely meaningless. And I wanted to factor in the slight advantage in grip this car would have over not having it. When you multiply it by 1,000, 80 points of downforce corresponds to about 3 points of PP. And that works actually pretty well so far. Until you factor in the tire compound into the formula. So what I've done, what I noticed was, in that last test, the cars could have probably been spaced apart by about 4 seconds each. And we want to close that gap. So I decided, well, maybe I was right at the end of part 3 when I said something along the lines of, I need to retune the aero scale to account for the tire. So this 321 here, or it used to be 1,000, what I did was I took the combined lateral and longitude G-limit multipliers for the tire compounds for the Comfort Hard. I divide that by the Racing Super Soft, and that's the proportion you get is 0.321, and then some irrational, it's like some irrational number or something. I don't know that it's irrational, but it's got so many, you know what I mean. It's a rather complex looking number. But rounding it, I get 0.321, and so I said, okay, I'll just multiply the aero scale by that. by that proportion, and hope that works. So we're cutting a little over a third out of the value of the downforce points. And what that should result in is that downforce holds less value overall because of the value of the tires. Because as we have just seen twice now, downforce does not make up for crappy tires. It's that simple. If you have crappy tires, you could have the biggest wing in the world and it won't make much difference. Alright, so now let's get to the tunes. Okay. So once again, we're going to copy and paste into a new tune so we can look at the difference here. Alright, first thing, really truncated tire, low D for reduced downforce, basically, just so that I know which is which. Okay, so now power. No, this might be fine. Bear with me, this is going to be strange, and I can't find my controller. Okay, this is going to be strange. We're dropping power. I know, but bear with me. Remember, it's the tires that matter, which is why we are upgrading to Sport Hard. Alright, so back here, right, as far as the game is concerned, we are going to have better acceleration, better braking, better cornering. So the car should maybe be faster overall, but it's still going to have a lower top speed than what it had before. So just some things to take into consideration. And then also, because downforce is worth less than what it was, we can upgrade the downforce a bit. And by a bit, I mean actually quite a lot. Considering the scale that we have to work with here. Okay, so now the downforce has been increased substantially. We are upgraded to a better tire. The power is slightly reduced though, so we'll have to see how that works. So I'm already concerned again, but I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic just because of the upgraded tire. Now, we're gonna go back and take a look at the Group 4 car. And once again, I'm going to paste here. The Group 4 car does not quite hit 2000 pp. It is at 1998. Tire. Low D. Okay. Now the Group 4 car finally gets a boost to its power, a much needed boost to its power. So we're getting up over 300. That's great. That's what we need to see. And it's still holding its minimum weight because that's the priority here. We are also going to upgrade to a Sport Soft tire. Right, so look at that. We're getting this, substantial boost in performance here. Great. And once again, we have room to upgrade the downforce. Or wait. No, we actually do not. We keep the exact same downforce settings after boosting the power and upgrading the tires. Okay. And now we're going to go into the road car. And does this need a new tune at all? This actually does not need a new tune, which makes sense because it does not have any downforce parts, any aerodynamics. No wings, no splitters, none of that really cool fun stuff, because it's a road car and not a full on-track car. Okay, so now we got our upgraded tires, we have our upgraded downforce on the Group 3 car as well, but the power is reduced, and that does concern me. But remember that the Group 3 car finished second, whereas the Group 4 car was lagging behind. Now the Group 4 car got the power boost that it needed, and it's actually a very similar amount of horsepower between the Group 4 and the road car, though the road car has a lot more weight. And then the Group 3 car, because it's on a lower quality tire, ends up with more power, and its weight is in the middle. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. I'm feeling more optimistic now about this. So once again, only one way to find out. It's time to take the cars to the track and see what they actually do. So we're about to jump into the Group 3 Supra. Reminder that the time we are looking for is over there in P6, the 212.626. And as we did not make any changes to that car, we actually don't have to drive it again. You know, unless I went to see, unless these cars do better than that time, and I want to see if I can drive that car better, or if the program needs to be retuned again. So let's begin. We are upgraded to the sports hard tire. We have more downforce. We do have a little less power though. So we have to keep those things in mind. Alright, so I've already done one lap with this car. It was a 2:14. I'm looking for a 2:12 or a 2:13 to really drive home that the system is better, or that it's working as intended. Now, that 2:14, it wasn't a very good lap for me in terms of the driving, so I'm going to just try and drive a better lap. Now you can see some of my lines are still a little bit funky, and yet I'm still pulling away from the go, so that lap was kind of pretty awful. And remember, I said I don't need a 100% perfect lap, but I need something that's good enough, and I don't feel like that lap was good enough. Foot in it. We have a 2:12.6. So less than a tenth of a second difference from what I achieved in the road car. So it looks like applying the proportion of the tire multiplier between the Comfort Hard and the Racing Super Salt to kind of cancel out their benefit, but factoring in the aero scale was the key here. So there we go, at P6 and P7 we got the road car at 212.626 and then the Group 3 at 212.683. Now all that's left is to see what happens when we use the Group 4 car. Alright, so now we have the Group 4 car. Once again, power has been bumped up substantially. It now makes over 303 horsepower. And the tires were upgraded to the Sport Soft. Now I've already done one lap with this car, but it was only a 215, and I think it can do better. I think it can drive better, I should say. We see the Ghost is already behind me in turn 1. So there were some corners where I drove in a bit too deep, somewhere I was a little bit too conservative. So, which happens when you're adjusting to, a new level of grip. Do a little better here. Now before the tires were factored in, the Group 4 car was actually the slowest, lagging back behind slightly. So it looks like we're going to have that same result again. Alright, let's see it. Yeah, so I'm off by about 2 seconds. Or 1.5. Which isn't exactly ideal, but it's still far better than what it was. So we have 214, 375 for the Group 4. And the other two are like right on top of each other, which is actually very similar to what we had at first. If you look at P3 through P5, or I'm sorry, P2 to P5, we had before trying to get the tires added in here, we had the Group 3 Supra at a 208, followed by the road car at a 209, followed by the Group 4 at a 211. And here we have pretty much the exact same result, but at a slightly slower speed. So, slower time, right? So we have the road car at a 212.626, then the Group 3 at 212.683, so not even a tenth of a second difference, which is actually closer than before. But then the Group 4 car lags behind by a little under 2 seconds. Which is exactly what we had before. You know, 209.2 to 11.0, a little under 2 seconds. And then again we have 212.6 to 214.3, a little under 2 seconds. Actually, slightly closer, I think. No, not quite. But yeah, still a little under 2 seconds. So it's pretty much back to how it was now before we factored the tires in. So this works, or at least it works as well as it did before the tires were factored in at all. So I feel like I could mess around with it and try and make it a little bit better, but I'm actually quite happy with how this has turned out so far, because as I probably said at the end of part 2, you're going to see some variance in different cars tuned to the same PP, or as close to that PP as possible. And in general, what you would likely do when you're running a lobby is you might not limit to just PP, you might also regulate the peak horsepower and the peak weight, which the app that I'm working on making will allow you to do it that way, where you tune the car based on a PP, horsepower, and weight restriction all at once. Now, the only question left is, should I also include a tire restriction, even though the tires are factored into the PP? Well, your thoughts below in the comments would be appreciated. And then, that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.